Thank you, Senator Brownback. I appreciate and thank you for your leadership in the rare disease community and putting on this hearing and everything else you have been doing. I'm the founder and president of the Kakkis Every Life Foundation, a foundation I established and funded to help improve the regulatory process for rare diseases. I have been working in the rare disease drug development area for 18 years, both in academia and in industry, developed 3 approved products, and put 7 more into development. And despite that success, I saw many challenges, both then and now, that make it more difficult to get drugs developed, and I think things that could be improved. There are still many patients out there, and every week I get calls from patients and families that have been essentially struck by genetic lightning with some terrible, unusual, unpronounceable disease, and they call because the mother and the father are setting up a foundation so they can raise money and do drug development. An impossible task for many, and yet they still have to do it for their children. After some time in the development area, I decided to leave industry and develop this foundation and develop the Cure the Process campaign. And this campaign is focused on what we felt were practical solutions to some of the problems that affect rare disease drug development, which I believe would greatly encourage drug development and successful treatment for patients. We currently have 129 formal endorsements, but from rare disease patient organizations, other patient organizations, as well as the physician groups that specialize in genetic diseases. What we have learned over the years, I think, can best be exemplified what we know in the Aldurazyme example. Aldurazyme was a treatment I developed. It was my original research for a disease called MPS I, a very rare metabolic disease. In that disease treatment, there's only a couple hundred patients on therapy, right? And it's a miracle that that treatment got developed at all, but I did it through however I could and managed to eventually get a biotech company to help us do it. What we found out during the development is a number of the problems. One, that surrogate endpoints were very difficult to use. In fact, were rejected because there was inadequate clinical information. In addition, clinical study design statistical issues caused some problems as well, which caused further delays. Ultimately, the program went to advisory committee, which voted 12-0 that the drug was effective and was approved, which seemed successful. However, it was a 3-year delay, and that time a number of MPS I patients passed away. But more importantly, the company canceled programs to treat MPS VII and MPS IVA, 2 other MPS disorders, because without the surrogate approval pathway and the costs that were going to be involved, that made it impossible for us to do those development. 10 years later, MPS IV, Morquio disease, and MPS VII do not have approved treatments. So when we look at some of the problems, one of the areas is access to the accelerated approval pathway. And I think that if you look at what's happened in genetic disease area, there's really been only one approval using the accelerated approval pathway. Now, this pathway was designed to give access to life-threatening disorders, and it's been very helpful in cancer and HIV. And in HIV, it's been, I think, miraculous in taking a death sentence disease to a chronic managed disease. But only one approved, and even that one was approved only after an advisory committee voted that the endpoint was acceptable. I think that there clearly are many biochemical disorders which could be approved by this pathway where the endpoints are even better than some of the ones that are accepted currently for drug approval. Our foundation has done some work and shown that if you allowed the accelerated approval pathway to function, it's possible that for a $1 billion investment in clinical development costs, you could develop 40 drugs with the accelerated approval pathway versus 10 to 12 with using a clinical development endpoint. So I think that's a substantial boost in the kind of work we could achieve for a given investment. Now, our hope in this campaign was also to develop a group that would help develop these guidances and improve the review process, and we believe it's necessary to have specialists who know the disease area to develop these guidances as well as to be involved in the review of drugs. This is what we're calling here the Special Biochemical and Genetic Review Division. We think that having the right specialized people within the agency with the right kind of academic connections to NIH to allow them to keep up to date with what's going on is really a critical step in achieving adequate and great reviews. We think the group could be creating guidances, and we think that the creation of guidance around studies and the surrogate endpoint or accelerated approval pathway are also critical. If we make these changes, we believe that there would be an immediate impact on new treatments. It would be a strong signal to the biotechnology industry that the FDA and Congress is serious about improving the development path for rare diseases, and I think would stimulate substantially more investment. Our estimate, based on analysis of other companies in rare disease genetic areas, that there's something like 300 to 600 new high-paying quality jobs for each drug approval, direct jobs within that company, and probably 5 times as many in the surrounding groups. For HIV, for example, the 29 drugs approved generated something like 78,500 jobs in the companies that made those. These are good jobs, ones that don't go away when the economy goes south. We think that the improvement that we are proposing, which is a specialized review division, as well as the improved access to the accelerated approval pathway and better clinical trial design paradigms, are the things that are very practical, sensible, not expensive, that could help improve the process and improve the investment and transformation of good science into great medicine. So I want to thank you for your leadership again and the opportunity to testify today.
Thank you, Dr. Kakkis, and also thank you for your leadership on this. I know you've worked it in the field and got frustrated because you had the problems that you did in experiencing the system, but instead of just taking your ball and going home or taking your money and leaving the field, you've stayed in it, and that's really an important thing, and it is a great contribution to the overall effort. Appreciate that very much.
Thank you. Well, the FDA currently does have separate divisions that do different, that are assigned different scope of diseases. What we're saying here is that they need to have a division that has particularly trained people in these diseases that are both biochemical or neuromuscular or some of the other genetic rare disorders that take specialized expertise. And that group needs to be a group that is trained in the pediatric subspecialties, not in other specialties. In the Alzheimer's case, I had a neurologist, a pulmonologist, and an oncologist review a disease that they never see in training and are not knowledgeable about. And in order to get the best regulation, you should have physicians that are actually very knowledgeable and trained in the field of medicine. And throughout FDA, there are certainly specialists in every area, but in certain areas, there's not good coverage. And I think that in this rare genetic disease area, there's not as good a coverage as there could be. So we're hoping to take some of the experienced people within FDA that are scattered in different places, consolidate them, bring in additional staff, and build a division where people can get expert and leverage their experience and stay together as a group, and rather than having the expertise diffuse and not leveraged over time.
You don't think they could just do that on almost a task force basis as drugs come through to, you're saying the expertise is there throughout FDA, that you could pull it together for particular reviews?
Well, the way usually when you apply to get, go into a clinic, you get a particular division that's applied. I think it's very hard to have other people impacting a review that are not really the ones who have to be personally responsible as reviewer and division head. We think that it makes sense to have that division group be specialized so they can gain experience over time. When you have them disseminated, that causes them to have to review things, for example, that are large market drugs or different, or expect people to be able to shift from different types of large market diseases to small rare diseases. And we think it requires more training and experience and focus to be able to make that happen. This is why we believe a specialized group is necessary. It's not something that's unusual. The FDA has a lot of groups that are designed. We just think that there's certain areas that are not well covered. We're not expecting this review group to be for all rare diseases. We're expecting for certain areas of the rare disease groups that are not currently well represented at FDA. There are definitely people that are talented and experienced at FDA that have reviewed these, but very often they are called on to do other tasks, and we think it would be better to have them focused and develop experience and get that group to be efficient and understand the process well. And I think that's the way you can get better decision making. Well, I think the challenge is that if you don't have the expertise among those actually doing the reviews, I think it's very difficult to expect other people from elsewhere to have input. So the Office of Orphan Product Development does advocate across the agency, but fundamentally they cannot affect the review process for drugs in a way that's fundamental. If the reviewers don't want to approve your drug, there's nothing the Orphan Product Office can do. The truth is that within the group of division, they are personally responsible as reviewers to make those decisions, and it's important to have them to have the right training. Just like you wouldn't want to go get heart surgery from a pediatrician, I think you'd want your drugs that are being reviewed to be reviewed by people trained in the area and that specialize in it and really understand it. It's fairly simple. They do have this in various areas in FDA. It's just certain areas that are not well covered. We certainly don't expect all rare diseases to be included in this one group. We're talking about only certain ones that are not well covered. Other rare diseases can be elsewhere. And we're highly supportive of the Office of Rare Disease that has been created, that with the acting director, Ann Paris, who's here today, that's a good concept to help coordinate across agency within the review division. But I still think there's certain groups that are not well covered and that we do need some additional support. Thank you.